Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Chronicles of Yarnia, the podcast from Montclair's local yarn store.
My name's Amanda, and this is podcast 43, I think.
Remember to like and subscribe to us down below, and you can follow us on YouTube, obviously, Chronicles of Yarnia. We are on Facebook as Yarnia LLC, Instagram is Shop Yarnia, Snapchat is Shop Yarnia, and our website is shopyarnia.com, where you can sign up for our newsletter, which goes out usually like once a week. And that's where you can get all kinds of like first dibs information about our classes, about what yarns are in store, sales, anything like that. We tend to throw everything into the newsletter. Then it ends up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. But like the newsletter is like the big way to do it. I do the newsletter every week.
Coming to you still socially distanced today. Actually more baby distanced. Hopefully probably one or two more of these. And then I can coordinate my schedule enough so we can all get together again.
So let's see. Let's talk about what's going on. I am currently hiding upstairs in my office and craft room, which is super messy. Don't look too hard at the background. I wish I could blur it. I kind of wish, like, the way my window faced, you would see, like, the cool craft books instead of, like, the random assortment of, like, greeting cards and, like, vintage YA books and things like that. But that would require moving things around, and I'm not doing that. Sorry. Yeah, so let's see. What's going on around town. What's going on around town for me is theoretically my little one is going to go back to school as hybrid end of January. We'll see if that happens. I don't know. But, you know, rolling with the punches. That's what we're doing. Right now he's doing stuff at home, as is my big one. So, yeah, so there's that. There's also the complete mess in DC, which hopefully you guys saw our Instagram post where we are standing, obviously, against the attempted coup and sedition going on in the country because it's ridiculous. But we're also making sure that we want to make sure that everybody knows that we stand in the gap and we stand with the Black knitters and crocheters, people of color, multiracial, indigenous folks in our fiber community to know that we are not only just saying we're against racism, we're committed to being anti-racist. And there's a difference in those two things. So, you know, it's one thing to be like, I'm not racist. I don't do this. I don't agree with this. And it's another thing to actively put yourself out there as somebody who is anti-racist and making change and standing up for others and, you know, maybe sacrificing some of our own white privilege in order to use that to help educate or change policy or change the way things go and make sure that it's not just about equality, but it's also about equity. Equity being everybody gets what they need, even if you get a little bit more and I get a little bit less. We all get what we need to get to the same place. And that's really important to me. I've been doing some personal work, as well as committing volunteer work with MFEE, the Montclair Fund for Educational Excellence, which has done a fantastic program about anti-racism and equity work in education, with part of it with a watch group called America to Me, based on the documentary series that I think is streaming on Stars. I'm not sure where it's streaming. I watched it on my computer. And talking about equity in schools and anti-racism in schools and how there are different experiences within the same building depending on race and depending on also economics. And in Montclair, I think that's a very important conversation to be having. It's a program that was designed in partnership with professors from Montclair State University. I highly, highly recommend it. It's a really great way to kind of like dip your toe into what it means to be anti-racist, and how white supremacy is really ingrained in our society in so many different ways, not just the outward, like actual white supremacists sitting there saying like there should be a white nation, but like all the way down to the way our institutions function, and how we can change that. So that's a really important conversation to me. It's a really important thing, I think, for our society. And as we said in our Instagram statement, that change begins with personal reflection, but it takes hold with personal action. And that's kind of what we're aiming for. So, yeah. So that little civics lesson in the kicker. Yeah, you can really see my Quaker heritage kind of coming out there, but my grandparents would be proud. So I'm very happy to be doing what I can as, a privileged white lady in Upper Montclair. What are we going to do? Anyway.
Yeah, what's going on? At least in the store, what's going on is I am getting ready for our Franca knit along that we're participating in with CocoKnits. So CocoKnits is starting a knit along. CocoKnits makes all sorts of like little, this just happened to be here, like little notions and things like that. These are stitch markers, all sorts of like really cool little knitting and crochet tools and helpers and things like that. But they also, Julie Weisenberger, who is the owner of CocoKnits, designs sweaters and has her own method of constructing a sweater, which I've always been interested in trying. It's sort of like a raglan, but not entirely like a raglan. Sort of like a contiguous method, if you've ever knit a sweater like that. So I'm really interested in trying that out. I'm always interested in new sweater constructions. I know there's a few more folks in the Yarnia family who are working on that, but we'll be participating in their knit along. CocoKnits is putting out are sending out emails every week and videos. There's going to be some Zoom help time, I think, from CocoKnits, and then we'll be hosting our own Zoom sessions for the folks who are knitting along to enjoy sharing our progress and asking questions if you need some help. But yeah, it's a pretty casual knit along, K-A-L, knit along, yeah. And the sweater that we're knitting is the Franca sweater, which is sort of like this one, right? An open front cardigan, sort of longish and relaxed and chill and just perfect, especially for all these days when we're hanging out at home. Perfect for that. We did have a pre-order for Far, Woolfolk Far, which is the yarn that the sweater was originally knit in. That pre-order's closed. But I did order a little bit extra sweater quantity of some of the colors, so if you're interested in using that, there's a limited selection of sweater quantities of Far available in the store. Or you don't have to use Far. It's sort of a worsted Aran. It's an Aran weight sweater, so heavy worsted to Aran. And we have a lot of selections of yarns that would work in the store. So Ella Rae. Rustic silk would work. Probably the Lucky Tweed, Kelborn Lucky Tweed, which we love, that would work. Let's see, off the top of my head, I'm going to blame Baby Brain, that I can't remember everything that would work right now. But definitely, if you're interested, shoot us a note or come into the store, either one, and happy to help you out. Yeah, so that kicks off on February 5th. Yay! Other things going on around town? Well, in my house right now, I have to say that so while I'm breastfeeding Teddy, which is my new baby, he's 6 weeks old, I watch a lot of TV things on screens. So sometimes I'm taking work calls, but a lot of times I'm chilling and watching something. So I've been watching I've caught up on all my favorite YouTube knitting podcasts and discovered some new ones. I've been watching the Fleece and Harmony podcast. which is they're a fiber farm. So they have a small flock of sheep and a store, and they have their own mill on Prince Edward Island in Canada. So I've been watching that. I've been through several episodes and they're just lovely, lovely to watch. But watching all this Prince Edward Island reminded me of Anne of Green Gables, which I love. I've watched a lot of, we only had 5 channels on my TV when I was growing up, and watching those PBS fundraiser marathons, Anne of Green Gables was like a solid show that was always in the spring marathon, right? You always got to watch that 3-hour Anne of Green Gables movie. And sometimes I feel like Anne of Avonlea too. The one with Colleen Dewhurst and what's her name? Who's it that plays Anne? Anyway, just awesome. I love it. So I remember when I was a kid, I used to always identify with Anne, who's like precocious and reads a ton and has an active imagination. And I was like, always like, that's, you know, I feel so much like Anne. And it's funny because I haven't watched it in a long time. But now I started it and I'm watching it again. You can get it on a streaming service called Gazebo. So I bought it because I know I'm going to watch it more than once, and I'll watch it with kids. It's such a good movie. But yeah, now I find myself like looking at Anne through a mom's eyes. Now she reminds me of my kids, and I can totally identify with Marilla, dealing with a precocious, imaginative, forgetful kid and all the stuff she gets into, and just being like, again. But yeah, it's really lovely to watch it again. And now also I'm noticing the knits, because there's so much hand knits in Anne of Green Gables. So I should write a blog about that, right? It's so cool because like they've got crocheted cardigans, there's sweaters, button-ups and vests, and there's color work and some of Anne's sweaters, and it's like all with this woolly wool. I mean, I think they tried to keep it definitely a period piece, so it all looks like natural dyed and, you know, not superwash for sure wool. So, and it's stuff which I really love. So it was really interesting to watch that and notice those things now, because that's what my brain pays attention to now that I have a yarn store and I'm knitting all the time. So yeah, so that's been really fun, enjoying that a lot, and maybe you'll see a blog post with some of those, and I might pop some pictures in here of some of the patterns that caught my eye. But anyway, let's see. So that's about what's happening here. Finished objects. Yay! I finished a sweater. I finished my, this one. I'm wearing it. Yay! It's even blocked. Oh. That's the good thing about finishing sweaters in the winter, is that, at least at my house, we have forced air heat, so our air is so dry. I just put it under the air vent and on the ironing board, and it dried in a day. I actually I soaked and washed it yesterday at like noontime. But this is the Comfort Fade Cardi by Andrea Mowry. I actually cast this on last April, or late March. Andrea Mowry had a knit-along for any of her sweaters in April and May of 2020. So I definitely cast it on, but I had this yarn to make this sweater in my stash for a while, because this is Spun Right Round Squish Decay. And I first saw this particular fade at TNNA, the National Needle Arts Association summer show when we went. That's a show that is for yarn vendors to sell to stores. So yarn suppliers, that's where we go and like find new yarns. But anyway, so they had this sweater in this yarn at the TNNA festival in 2019, and I loved it so much, and we were bringing Squish DK into the store, and so I'm like, great, I'm going to get enough to make a sweater. And with a lot of things, I want to knit more than I possibly can knit. So these skeins were actually sitting in my stash for a year, almost a year, before Andrea Mowry announced her knit along. And I'm like, this is perfect. I have the yarn already in my house. I have the plan. I know what I'm going to do. So I cast it on. And probably if I had done the pattern as written, I could have finished it in April and May. But I didn't. This cardigan is knit in reverse stockinette. So that means that the purl bumps are on the outside and the little V's of stockinette are on the inside. Here, I'll show you what that looks like. Yeah, see, so it's like a little nubbly texture like that. So reverse stockinette is actually, if you look at cables a lot of times, reverse stockinette is what's the background of cables, and that means this makes the perfect palette to modify and add your own special touches to. So what I did, Pom Pom, the cover of Pom Pom in 2018 had the Nightingale sweater on the front by Nora Gone. And I love that cable, but I didn't necessarily want to make the sweater that it was on. It wasn't particularly my style, but I love the cable, the design. So I took that cable and put it on the back of this sweater. And so this is what it looks like. Let's see. Da-da-da. Yay. I love it. It looks so nice. So I think it looks like a cathedral window, right? And you can even see it with the fade. It looks so nice. So that cable was like a 2-page tiny print, 140 row cable or something like that. So that slowed me down a little bit. I worked on it all through the summer until August, and then I put all my whips aside, and I actually finished the whole body of the sweater and one sleeve by the middle of August, at which point I put everything aside and started working on baby things, which I worked on through December when Teddy was born. And then I'm done with all the baby things, so I've been pulling out my old whips. So a lot of the things I'll be talking about now are things that you've heard about 6 months ago when I cast them on, but I'm now getting back to them and finishing them up. But yeah, so it was actually nice because I had finished this sleeve, and so I picked it up and finished this sleeve. And I use the stitch marker method where I mark every decrease I do as I do it on my sleeve. So it didn't matter that I waited a while to start the next sleeve. I knew exactly what I had done in the prior sleeve, and it's easy to match it. And I do love this pattern. The sleeves are nice and snug, so they don't add bulk on your arms, and they, even as written, right, they're a little bit longer. This is where I love my sleeves to hit. Which is one reason I knit this sweater again. It just fits so well. It is, I'd say, like this crisscross cable right here at the top with the seed stitch in the middle, double seed stitch. It does pull a little bit right here across the shoulders, but that could also be that I knit a medium size and my post-baby body isn't exactly a medium yet. 30 pounds from now, it might fit a little bit better right around this area. Yeah, but not worrying about that right now. That'll come by next Christmas, right? I got a year for sure. But yeah, it definitely is comfy right now. I will say, like, on the first sleeve, I knit it, and you can see where I changed colors, especially in the cuffs, right? This ridge is here, which is not bad, but it's not awesome. On this sleeve, I tried something a little different, where you slip the first 3 stitches of each row that changes colors. So this one doesn't have a seam, but there is some still funky little wobbliness going on here, where the first 3 stitches cross over 2 rows. to get to the next color change or something. It's not exactly right. So anyway, that's worth experimenting with. I might experiment with it a little bit. But in general, this sleeve I did, every time I did a color change, I did like a helical thing. So I think it looks a little bit better than this one. Has like a somewhat visible seam down one end, one sleeve. I might experiment with that. That's the only thing that's a little bit tricky about this. It's not even tricky. It's just if you're picky, then, you know, there are a lot of color changes, stripes, and your stripes can get wonky. I'm sure Jen can tell you how to not do that. But like I said, I tried helical knitting, which is okay, but not perfect. And maybe it might have to do, I bet it has to do with that I'm knitting garter stitch. And when you slip those stitches, it ends up where you have two stockinette V's, one on top of each other, right? Which interrupts the garter. I bet there's something to do with that. So I bet there's another technique you should use for that. Maybe I'll investigate. That'll be another blog post, or maybe a tutorial video when I figure it out. I should make it, when I edit this, I'll make a note of that. But anyway, so finished project number 1 though. I'm super happy with it. I'll take some photos of my Comfort Fade Cardi by Andrea Mowry with the cable on the back. Yay! My second finished object is a store sample. And we have a new yarn. It's by Rae. It's called Kid Fur. So this is it. Yay! This is half a ball that I have left in the Budgerigar colorway. Actually, nope, not there. Do I have the ball band somewhere? So yay, Rae Kid Fur. So that's the ball band. Yay. And it is alpaca and mohair. 56% alpaca, 25% mohair, and 19% poly, which gives it, it has this core that all the fluff is attached to. And the reason we got this is because I love, especially I love those sweaters that use like several strands of silk mohair together to make like a bulky weight yarn, but it feels light as a feather. I made, it wasn't a Sunday sweater, it was a Sunday sweater, it was a PetiteKnit sweater. I think it's PetiteKnit. Yeah. I made one of her sweaters that's like that. I'll put a picture in here with the name below. But I made that, but a lot of our customers don't necessarily like to hold 4 or 5 strands of silk mohair together when they're knitting. I mean, it is a lot of balls to manage. My tip on that is to put each ball in its own Ziploc sandwich bag, which, you know, the ball then rolls freely within there, and, you know, you zip it up except for a little bit that's open and you just have a string coming out. Yeah, I mean, even within like a cotton bag or, you know, a burlap bag or something like that, the silk mohair can get, there's friction on it when you're pulling, but inside the plastic it rolls freely. So that's my tip on that, to keep all your balls under control if you're using that method. But if you don't want to deal with it, guess what? You can use Kid Fur. And yeah, and then you just use one strand and knit the same pattern. So I did knit this swatch. This will be in the store, you can take a look at it. I think this would make a lovely sweater. It's so nice and light and still like filled in and not like too. And this is knit on a 7mm needle, which is a 10.75, US 10.75. There's a big gap between a US 10 and a US 11. A US 10 is 6mm, a US 11 is 8mm. I mean, that's sort of craziness. And then like below 10, a 9 is like a 5.5mm, right? So you've got 0.5mm increments for a while, and then a 2mm increment, which is a major difference between a 10 and 11. So that's why you have so many like decimal point increments between 10 and 11. So a 10.5 is a 6.5mm. A 7mm is a 10.75. 7.5mm is a 10.875, which sounds ridiculous. but it's just a US sizing cork. The millimeter sizes, which European patterns use, are probably more reliable to take a look at. But anyway, I used a 7.5 millimeter 10.75 needle to knit this up, which is what the sweater that I knit, that I forget the name of, was knit on. It's actually, if I have that needle. So this would be an awesome choice for that sweater. I knit that one up so fast I might knit it for one of my daughters because it's lovely. It looks great. Has nice puff sleeves. But I also knit a sample for the store. And I made the Simple Beret by Hannah Fettig. Yay! So I knit this. This pattern is really cool. The Simple Beret she wrote for, what, Sport DK Worsted and Bulky? Or is it Fingering DK Worsted and Bulky? Something like that. 4 different yarn weights, same pattern, all on one page, and it's really well graded for all the sizes, and just as like a really nice simple beret. I worked this up in a couple of days, and I'll put it on so you can see it. It looks cute. I particularly love berets. For any of you that have been watching the podcast for a while, you'll know I love berets. Yay! Yay! This is the Kid Fur. So yeah. But for this one, like I said, nice and light, perfect for a sweater. I wanted something a little bit heavier for a beret. Keep my ears warm, because I probably will end up keeping this one once it's not a sample anymore in 3 or 4 years. But also, just like a little bit denser fabric, not something very floofy. You could definitely knit it just like this with nothing else with it. But I knew in my stash I had, because this I got from our supplier to do a sample. This is actually the second ball. It took just a smidge into the second ball for me to make the simple beret out of Kid Fur. So you should probably get 2 balls just to be safe. But I put mine, held it double with the Rowan felted tweed, which A, these colors go together awesome, and B, I think it just adds a really nice depth of color, right? This one has the blues and the yellows that this one is sort of playing off too, and makes a denser fabric on the same needle size. So yeah, I used a 10.75 on that hat too, I think. Yes, I did, because I didn't even bother to change my needle to knit the swatch. So 10.75 needle on that. I will say, like, holding it together, anytime you knit a denser fabric, if you're knitting denser fabric, there's more friction on the strands of yarn as you're pulling them through with your needle, so it's a little bit harder to pull those stitches through. That's the same if you're, if you're knitting worsted on a 6 or something like that, for a nice dense fabric, or if you're knitting DK on like a 4 or 3, right, you can do that, and a lot of patterns call for that kind of denser fabric. But yeah, it's going to take more friction, take more effort. And the way that with the little hairs, sometimes you do have to, they get a little tangly and snaggy sometimes. You just have to pull the stitch through a little bit more. I just had to get used to it. As I was working on that hat, by the end I didn't even notice anymore. And certainly at the looser gauge, holding Kid Fur just by itself on the 7mm, I barely had to worry about that at all. So yay.
So, talking about yarn, let's see. I think what do? We do finished objects. Finished objects. I don't have anything. I have not finished a dang thing since Christmas, and I forgot to take pictures of those again. And my father is the worst model, considering apparently my mother said he's going around the house wearing 2 hats at once. And do you know what hat he's putting on the outside? Not the new pretty hats, but the old hat that's super ratty that I had hemmed and mended 4 times. So it just looks janky. And I'm like, you've got to hide that from him. I'm like, I'm going to go over there. Like, as soon as one of us gets the vaccine, I'm going to go over there and rip it off his head. Give him the new ones. Make sure he wears the new ones pretty side out. Wear the old one inside. That's fine. Speaking of vaccine, if you guys haven't already, please make sure that you go to your state website or your county website or both. In the state of New Jersey, they are registering people for vaccines, whether you are in group 1A, B, or C. Doesn't matter. Register anyway, because when they hit your level, they'll contact you. So highly recommend going to the coronavirus newjersey.gov. I can't remember what the actual site is. And putting in your information and registering for the vaccine. And then also, if you're in New Jersey, especially if you're in Essex County, go to the Essex County side as well, because they are registering people. I believe I am actually group 1C, thanks to obesity being one of the pre-existing conditions. The one time the high BMI comes in handy. Nice. But I'm also really wanting to get my folks vaccinated because they're both, mid to upper 70s, and my dad has type 2 diabetes, and it's the first step. It's the first step in retaining some normalcy. So yeah, yay public health. Thank God. So anyway, I totally digressed from my finished objects and how I don't have any. Yeah, anyway, I'm also wearing the Magnolia pullover, Camilla Vad. I think I've shown this on the podcast before. I can't remember if it was like in person or not. Here's the lace at the bottom. There we go. And it's on the sleeves. It's a very awkward pose because I don't really have any place back behind me to go. I knit this with some unnamed gray fingering that I had in my stash and some silk mohair, similar to Drizzle or Knitted Wits Fairy Floss, which I love Fairy Floss. It's funny because I'm not a huge mohair fan. Like, I don't know that I could do like a full sweater of just mohair, but this is really nice, and it's like light and it's airy and it's a bit drapey. It's easy to wear. It's got a bit of ease. It's a round yoked pullover that goes, my actual underarm is up here. So I was a little unsure about how that was going to be because normally I like things a little higher and tighter. But this works really well. I like this pattern a lot. I will say, if you are a dead beginner, pattern-wise, it's clearly written, but it is a little tricksy. And I cannot remember. I do not think the lace is charted. Or maybe it is charted and then I just recharted it. Anyway, I recharted it because I prefer doing lace from a chart. Especially because this is a really long repeat of lace. It's like, I've got to hit it with a gleaner. I want to say it's like 40 rows. Yeah. So that's my finished object, which is long finished. So let's go to works in progress because that's more fun. I am still working on, just because I had to take a little break from it, the cardigan. There we go. The cardigan from the class, Mariechen. So I'm working on it now. I'm finishing up the button bands, and then I'll do the sleeves, and then I have to pick buttons, which is the hardest part. So there's that. And then I have, oh my gosh, I'm all tangled. I've also been working on the summer sorrel, and I finally, so here's the summer sorrel. Boop. There we go. I'm almost done with the ribbing. And what I finally did was I took another sweater that I liked the fit of, and where I liked where it hit. Most importantly, I liked where it hit. And in that case, it's the Felix pullover, which is inside out right now, but I'm not turning it right side up. Felix pullover, and what I did was I laid it flat, and I measured from the shoulder to the hem. And normally, you would compare underarm to hem measurements for the total length of a sweater. But in this case, I am not sure how high and tight, how much ease there is in the underarm. So if I compared, the Felix has a lot of ease, right? So if I compared the underarm to hem measurement on the Felix, which is something like 11 inches, to the underarm to hem measurement on something that fit closer up, I would get an inaccurate measurement in terms of the length. So what I'm really looking for in this case was the overall length from the shoulder to the hem, because the sweater is going to hang from the shoulder to the hem. And that gives me an idea of where it's going to lie, because I think the ease that the summer sorrel has is going to be a lot less than the ease the Felix has, at least in the underarm. So that's something where if you've ever compared like sleeve lengths where you measure underarm to hem or hem lengths, underarm to hem, on two different sweaters that have a different style of fit, you're not getting the full picture, right? Now, if it's a top-down sweater, you can try on one sweater and note where it hits you. And then try on your sweater in progress and then see where you need to go. That's fine. That's 100% accurate. But I'm really lazy and I don't feel like taking this off the needles. So it's easier for me to lay out the Felix, where I know where it hits. I know how I like it. The Felix on a flat thing and then put the sorrel on top of it, or just measure from shoulder to hem on the Felix and then compare the measurement on the summer sorrel. That way I know I will get a sweater that fits the way that I want it to fit. And I'll probably do the same thing on the sleeves, but the sleeves I feel like are a little bit easier to just throw your arm in and be like, does that fit? Does that not fit? I don't know. One other thing I just want to note, because I realized this is inside out, you can probably see, I routinely put things on backwards. Sometimes I've put things on backwards and inside out because apparently I'm a toddler. But anyway, for hand-knit sweaters especially, I find it's really hard to tell. So one of the things that I do is, you see I have a little bit of contrasting yarn that I've just kind of whip stitched around at the neck of my Felix. So I can always tell, and you can't really see it. At least I don't think you can see it from the right side. It's very difficult to hold this. And you can't see it from the right side because I've just kind of skimmed through. And I picked a color that wasn't super obtrusive. But that way you note your back. I think I have it on this too. Can we see? I don't know that you can see. I have a little pink thing. So just take any other yarn and just kind of go boop, 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 boop. Because you don't necessarily need a tag. You just need some kind of notification. It's a lot easier than trying to hold it up and be like, is that short rows? I don't know. Maybe? Who knows? Anyway, so I'm working on my sorrel. I'm almost done with the ribbing on that. And then I'm going to move to the sleeves. And I think I'm going to do 3/4 sleeves. And I had like I'm like, maybe I'll do like bishop sleeves where you go straight down and then you gather them all, kind of like on the oh my gosh, what is that called, the love note. There we go, like on the love note. But I'm not sure if I want that, so I'm gonna just wait and see how I do. So my next work in progress is not yet in progress, but I just picked colorways for a temperature blanket because I'm crazy. Fundamentally, I'm crazy. So let me see if I can hold this up. I have them almost. Yikes. I mean, you guys know I love my full spectrum rainbow. And a lot of temperature blankets are full spectrum rainbow, but I realized for like home deck, maybe I didn't want full spectrum rainbow. So I have this, and I picked this out yesterday, and Stacia approved it. I have to say, it was probably the quickest I've picked out a colorway for a big project, or a colorway in general, in like a really long time. And it may have been because I only had 15 minutes before somebody started calling me, because I can't leave the house for 5 minutes before somebody starts calling me over and over and over again. Yeah, I love my children. So anyway, this is going to be high temp. The other hardest part was trying to figure out the temperature range, because I was like, I want it to be well distributed, but like we do occasionally get some crazy high temps and we get some crazy low temps. But I realized I'm using fingering weight, So one of the things I can do is I can just hang on to, I can just pick up a Knitted Wit double bubble, or I'm sorry, not double bubble, a Knitted Wit gumball if I need like one single color, right? So I can get one of the darker pinks for like, you know, if there's a crazy hot day in the middle of August or something like that. I can get one of the double bubbles and just use that because I'm only going to need it like once or twice, if that. And I was trying to decide, am I going to do high temps? Am I going to do low temps? Am I going to do averages? I decided on averages because honestly, it was easier. And that way it's an average. So we have, it's primarily Manos Allegria with an occasional Madtosh thrown in. I did also look at the ba, and I also realized like if I needed to swap in another color, I have enough fingering that I might be able to find it. So we have Allegria Estancia, Petal. What is this one? This one is Madtosh Light Candy. Manos Celadon, Madtosh Lost in Trees, Oxygen, Foil. Oh gosh, what is this one? No Buck. It's like purpley gray. Reindeer and Coal. So I'm going to do this temperature blanket. I'm going to do crochet, which I don't normally crochet, but I like crochet for blankets. So I'm going to do crochet. I'm going to do 1 row a day in moss or linen stitch, where it's the single crochet chain 1, single crochet chain 1, and then the next row you go into the chain. So I'm going to do 1 row a day. I'm going to do it in moss or linen, and I did the math and I did the swatch. And the reason I picked fingering is because I did a little swatch in some DK that I had, thinking like, oh, I'll do a DK weight blanket. Right? That'll be great. And I did the math and I realized 365 days would be a 7.9 foot long blanket. And that is bonkers. So I'm not doing that. 365 rows of fingering for me works out to about 6 feet, which is perfect. So I think I'm going to aim for a 4 or 5 foot wide by 6 foot blanket, figuring my gauge will grow over time. I tend to be loose. So I figure that will be fine. Yeah, but I can't do an 8 foot long blanket. That is just crazy. And I'm not doing panels. I can do a row a day. So I already wrote out and researched my average temperatures. By the way, I 100% blame Laura Jean from Knitted Wit and Shannon Squire for getting me hooked on this idea. Like, follow them on Instagram. They've got a great temperature project going on with Knitted Wit yarns, and also January 1, who I follow on Instagram, and she's like, oh, look at the temperature blanket hashtag. I'm like, okay, now I have a year-long blanket project, but yay. Year-long blanket project. Woohoo! I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be good. So let's see. I think that's it. I don't know what else is going on, and this is already 21 minutes. But Amanda, you have to edit out Ollie. So good luck to you.
Okay, now I have 3 projects to tell you about and works in progress. 3 things that I've made significant progress on this week. The first, yay, is my Elder throw. So you'll remember I started that. It was a Rowan knit along. It was sort of a mystery knit along. You knew what the blanket looked like before we started it back in April, but we didn't have the pattern. The pattern was released every 2 weeks in April, May, and June, maybe even in July, because there were 8 sections. I got to section 3, which was a cable section that just took me a lot longer than 2 weeks to finish. And as a yarn store owner, I actually, and a sponsor of the knit along, I actually got the pattern 2 weeks in advance so we could like knit it and practice it and be able to help customers. and I couldn't finish it in 4 weeks. It took me till August, pretty much, to finish that square, because it was like lattice cables, so you have to cable every front side row. Yeah, and still do like knits and purl patterns on the back row. It was just, for some reason, it took me a long time. So 3 took me forever and ever. But now, and I put it aside after I finished 3 and started baby things and that type of stuff. But now I got it back out, and guess what? I finished 4 and almost all of 5. Yay! So 4, super awesomely fast. That was these like little squares here. So I knit 8 of these little squares here. They go in each corner of the blanket, and there's like these panels where 2 are mattress stitched together. And these are going to be towards the center of the blanket. So that's 4. And then 5, you picked up stitches on either side of these 4, and you knit this like meshy pattern here. Yay! In 2 color stripes, which was really fun. So this one I finished 4 and 5 here. I finished 4, and I just finished this morning that side of 5, and so I just have to pick up and knit this side of 5. Yay! And then I'm done with 4 and 5 in like 2 weeks. Nah, 4 weeks. 4 weeks. But still, that's a normal pace for this blanket. I don't know what happened with clue number 3. That was a lot. But then I've just got clue 6 and 7. Yeah, so 6 is pretty substantial. 7 is quite tiny. And then it says the border is 8. Yay! And I feel like somehow when I get to blanket borders, I don't mind. I just like keep going. Like then I feel like it's actually done, and I can just wear it as a blanket and continue knitting on the border. I don't know. The borders could take a while, but it's really pretty. It's striped. I think it's going to go fast. It's not complicated at all. It's just striped garter on the border. But we'll get to that when we come to it. Right now, working on these. Really happy with the progress I've made. This whole blanket is knit in felted tweed. I think there's A through M colors, so what's that, like 12, 13 colors, something like that. We put kits together last spring, and so yeah, there's quite a few people who are working on this blanket, or did finish it. If they're faster at clue 3 than me. But yeah, I was really excited about this project. Still really excited about it. Can't wait for it to be done. And I think it's going to look beautiful in my living room. I can't wait. Oh, my snafu. So I was reading the pattern too fast. And this is the first square I knit. And they list out, like I said, A through M. And I thought that this was supposed to be this light green and dark green. The light green is Eden, and the dark green, I forget what the dark green is called. It's a substitute for the avocado, because Rowan was out of the avocado when we were ordering our kits. But the light green is Eden. So, you know, I'm substituting in this dark green throughout, and whatever, like it makes sense. I read the pattern too fast. It was supposed to be that light green and Seafarer, which is a navy, and that would have been really pretty. So now I used too much of this dark green here, and I'm supposed to have Seafarer, which I could put instead on this side. So this one is the one that's actually supposed to be this color green, paired with the color granite, right, for this square, which I feel looks very similar to this square, right, with the light green. Or I could substitute out that green, which I've already used extra of, for the Seafarer, and knit that one on the other side of this square here, which I might do. The only problem is that this panel, this number 5 panel, abuts one of the Clue 3s, those lattice cable things, in a seafarer color. So I don't know if I'm going to do that. If I do that, I think I have to reverse the colors the way they're supposed to be in this pattern, and make the granite the solid stripes and this as the eyelets, because then there will be a granite stripe between this pattern and the granite and the seafarer color square rectangle. But anyway, so that's I've been thinking about that. I do think I'm going to do that because I like that combo rather than do this combo. Not that this is a bad combo, it just looks super similar to this one. Oh well. Rule, new rule, old rule, read your pattern twice. Pick the right colors if you've got multiple colors and doing color work. Oh well, I'm definitely not ripping this square out and redoing it because all the colors are used mixed up and it'll look great. Definitely redoing the first one is not an option. So now it's just what am I going to do for this one. So I think I'm going to switch the granite and do that with the seafarer. I think that'll be pretty. Let's see. Bringing back another oldie but goodie in terms of my whips. You're like, Amanda, you've called this a finished object 3 times. That's true. But I just wanted to give a very short update on my Daniakalopa, which has been sitting with no buttons and no button band for months. We did the steeks in November or October I want to say. It's been sitting with no buttons and no button band for a long time, or no ribbon for a long time. I did put all my buttons on. I put them on using superwash wool. I didn't want to use thread because sometimes thread is so thin it can break through non-superwash wool. It's just too much tension on one tiny bit on the yarn, and also I didn't want to use necessarily the same non-superwashes here because yeah, the phenol yarn, you can break it just with your hand. So I wanted to use something stronger. So this is actually Tosh sock that I had lying around from socks that I finished last summer. So I put them on with those. I'm gonna weave in these ends very lightly. But yeah, that'll be done, and they're secure and they're holding on and they're not gonna fall off and all that jazz. So yay. So these are pewter buttons. These are Skacel pewter buttons. From Norway, so I thought they were like perfect on this sweater. So those are all on now. I just have to weave in some ends. The exciting thing and the reason that I wanted to bring this in is I'm putting in my ribbon. So this is what I'm working on. You can see I've sewn down the top here and all down this button band side. And I was reading a blog online that said to use a fell stitch, which just like catches the outside. Actually, I might do a little demo of how I'm sewing on this this ribbon using a fell stitch, because I was going to just whip stitch the edge, which is similar, but not exactly the same. And it was really interesting to read a blog post by a Norwegian knitter that indicated what the best way to sew down that button, that ribbon on your button band. So yay. This is getting done. I actually finished all of this on one conference call yesterday, so I'll probably finish up these and I'll probably be wearing this next podcast. Woohoo. But yay. Progress on that. Finally, it's taken me forever to get those ribbons on, and the buttons on, but isn't that how it always is with sweaters like that? But yeah, I definitely need more cardigans now, because that is the thing to wear in the wintertime when you're feeding a baby, is a cardigan. So everything's still accessible, but you stay warm. Yeah, so very eager now to finish up that, which will be done shortly. And the very last thing that I'm working on is a tiny little, I have a brand new whip, because now that I finished my sweater, I finished all the baby things, I'm getting to now the things that are actually in my queue. You know, elder throw is going to take its own time, and I keep that up here. You know, that's a good feeding the baby project to work on while I'm feeding the baby. And you know, this one I just started last night. But this is Drachenfels by Melanie Berg, or it will be. Drachenfels is a sport weight shawl, triangular shawl, and it's knit, yeah, it just grows from here, and then you bind off on one side of the side. And the reason I'm knitting this is because I'm trying out this sport weight yarn. We have Cash Merino Sport, which is fantastic. I knit something for Teddy out of Cash Merino, and it would actually work lovely in this shawl too. But there's a lot of sweaters that call for sport. Cash Merino is a washable yarn, and sometimes, you know, you're looking for something that is maybe non-superwash or a little bit more woolly, or something else has a different texture. Cash Merino is a blend too. It has wool, cashmere, and nylon, I think. And for folks who are looking for 100% wool, this one would also be a good option. Like I said, with a lot of our yarns in our store, we test them out and we don't bring them in if we don't like them. But so far, I mean, this is very short in. I'm really enjoying this. So we'll let you know as this project continues, the verdict on that. And if not, I'll find you another good sport. But yay. So this is actually ends up being a nice, easy project. I will say, I will say the one thing about this shawl that I've already noticed, is that there is a 6-row repeat through the whole shawl. And what that does, you increase a certain number on the right side rows. Increase and decrease. So all of your stitch count changes are on the right side. The wrong side rows, knit across. Great. So it's a garter stitch. But it's a 6-row pattern. So you increase a certain number of rows on, or a certain number of stitches on row 1, on row 3, and row 5, and those are different. And I found it, you know, the first few rows are short and you remember what you're doing, but then once, even, you know, like once you're up here, you forget, like, wait, am I on row 1 or row 3? Did I do row 5 already, or did I not do row 5 already? So that's becoming a problem already. I know that I'm trying to be disciplined and finishing my pattern each time on a row 6, but even that's getting to the point where I know my rows are going to get longer and I can't always finish 6 rows every time I sit down, you know, like by the time we've got 25 inches of stitches or something like that. So my solution is going to be like my row counter, my gotcha row counter. And I'm just going to count right side rows. So before I start each row, I'm going to click my counter, and that tells me, is it a row 1, a row 2, or a row 3? And yeah, so row 3 is the right side row 3, which is row 5 of the 6-row repeat, is the one you need to pay attention to. So that's always a 3. So every time I get to a number that's a multiple of 3, that's when I need to do something. And I think that'll work. I just have to remember to click it at the start of each row and pay attention to the number, and that tells me what to do on that row. And it's easy to figure out if it's a multiple of 3, because if you add the numbers and they are divisible by 3, you add the digits of the number that's divisible by 3, then it's a multiple of 3. Ta-da! Math facts. But anyway, yeah, so this is going to live with me with Drachenfels. inside my knitting bag. Seriously. Okay, so that's all I have today. Already talked about the Franca knit along, which is happening, like I said, starting February 5th. There's going to be more information in the newsletter coming up this Monday. I'm going to do, I told Jen I'd do a little Q&A on, questions folks might have and what exactly how it's going to work, 'cause it's a little bit different from our other knit-alongs since it's actually run by Coconuts. So anyway, great to talk to you. Hope everybody's doing well and staying healthy. Happy New Year now that the New Year is well underway and we're all getting used to it. Well, I mean, if we all wrote checks, we'd get used to writing 2021. We'd be used to writing 2021 almost on our checks by now. I actually had to sign a bunch of documents the other day for my insurance job and got used to writing 2021. So that makes it official. Take care. Good to see you all and happy knitting.
All right, folks, it was lovely to chat with you. I believe I'm being beckoned down for to fetch more Chinese food for the 7-year-old who loves his Chinese food. So I kind of don't blame him. I would also like some chicken and broccoli and lo mein. That'd be pretty tasty. But I hope everybody is doing well. Don't forget to go register for your vaccines if you can. And we will see you next time. Bye. Uh-oh. I hear somebody.
Hey, Mom.
Yes?
I think you forgot the chicken and broccoli pot.
I didn't give you chicken and broccoli. I just gave you lo mein. I'll give you chicken and broccoli later. Can you say hi? You have jello mouth. All right, I gotta go because otherwise Amanda's gotta edit too much out. Give me a kiss. Give me a kiss.
Blah, blah.
Give me a kiss.
Blah, blah. You're not deleting this.
I'm not deleting this. Come on. All right, go. Ow, ow. Jesus.
Down.
All right, go back down, please.
I need the chicken and broccoli.
I can't get you chicken and broccoli.
Chicken and broccoli.
He really likes Chinese food?
Chicken and broccoli.
Okay. Seriously.